Now, before you get that 100% scholarship or even any funding from any university, the first thing that actually needs to happen is you getting accepted by a college. Now, many students fail to understand that getting a scholarship and getting accepted by the college are two separate things, and they happen one after the other instead of both at the same time. So to get accepted by the university, you have to have a profile that showcases a wholesomeness and things that help you stand out. Now, for those of you that are new to the channel, my name is Saloni. I'm currently working in New York and I studied at Cornell University. Now, a lot of things that helped me get into Cornell at the time, which I feel kind of helped me stand out from the other students, included my research at Harvard that was published in a pretty good journal before I applied to the colleges, my volunteering experiences, some internships that I did over the summer, and also a passion project where I created a hand tremor suppression device. Everything done without it being like a part of the school curriculum. Now, there are 8 Ivy Leagues in the US and they are considered one of the most prestigious universities to study at across the world. So it is every student's dream to actually get admitted into these. Now, each year, all of the universities, not just these 8 Ivy Leagues, they release a set of data that helps students understand what kind of a profile actually got admitted. So looking at some numbers that kind of work for these 8 Ivy Leagues. So approximately 40 to 60,000 students applied each year to these 8 colleges. And the numbers kind of vary here and there, but this is like a good ballpark to be in. Now, out of these thousands of students, approximately, I would say on average, 300 international students are accepted. So you can just see how rigorous and advanced the actual competition is. So you need to be one among these 300 students that catches the eye of the admission officer. Now, looking at some stats and breaking down what kind of grades students who got into these Ivy Leagues look like, most of the students that got into these colleges had a GPA of above 3.75. Now, if you're wondering, roughly 3.75 equates to 90-ish%. So if you have that grade, you are in a good standing to actually get admitted by these top colleges. Other than that, some other stats were most of the colleges went test optional. Now, this happened in the last few years, and a few of them may bring this back. However, as you can see, if more than 90% of students have like outstanding grades, what exactly can other students or even you do to help yourself stand out from the crowd? Because that is what is super important. Imagine 10 different students have 95% in their board exams. Which 2 are going to be picked by the top colleges? And that brings us to the extracurricular activities. Now, most of the colleges consider these to be very important. If not, they consider it as a supplemental information that they use to determine how a student's profile looks. So outside of grades, what other things have you done to showcase your passion, to further your interest, or to learn a new skill? These activities, in my opinion, can be divided into 3 categories. There is personal development, community growth, and academic resilience. And if we were to like break this down further, this is basically what it looks like. You have your leadership skills. These can be like school positions where you're like the captain of your school, or you founded a club, you're the president of a club. We have academic options like science Olympiads where you're competing in something like a science exhibition or a hackathon. Volunteering experiences, cultural and sports. Again, this is optional based on what your interest is. Community development, environmental, and a passion project. Now, in no way does this mean that you need to have all of these type of activities in your profile, but in my opinion, I think it's a good idea to have maybe 3 or 4 different types. And the reason I say this is it showcases that you're doing more than just studying and passing an exam in your school. It shows that whatever your interest is, it can be anything. It doesn't have to be related to computer science if you're going for that degree. You're going outside and wanting to learn more about a skill that you're interested in. Now, let's bust some myths or things that students do wrong. And I've seen this over all of the comments in a lot of the YouTube videos. And the biggest one out of these is that students try to tailor all of their activities towards the major that they're applying for. And I think this is one of the biggest misconception out there, because think about it, you're just in high school. Colleges don't expect you to have everything figured out. Just because you want to study maybe a biology major and go into pre-med, that doesn't mean that all of your activities are tailored towards something that is science related. You have to have a wholesome profile. What they care about is that you want to learn something and that you're actually going out there and doing the learning rather than just streamlining yourself in one specific subject. Because at the end of the day, you never know. After you get into college, maybe you want to pick a minor that is completely different from biology, maybe finance, or after the first year of college, you just want to change your major altogether because after studying it for 1 year, you just don't think that this is the right career path for you. Activities should be done in class 11 or 12. Now this, I kind of understand where students are coming at. They realize that maybe towards entering class 12, you need to have like a good profile, you don't have anything to showcase, so you start doing all of these new activities to put on your college application. Now here's the thing, if a student has 5 activities that they've been doing for the last 4 years and another student has 10 activities that they did in the last 1 year, colleges would prefer this first student because it showcases that you've committed to something for a longer period of time. Your school doesn't offer any activities. Now this is a pretty old excuse that I think has gotten very, very overused. And at this point, with internet, with a lot of things being virtual, this can no longer be your excuse. Now later on in the video, we're going to explore some ways in which you can actually get involved virtually to build your own profile. Lastly, you need certificates for all of your extracurricular activities. You don't exactly attach these certificates when you're filling out college applications, but this doesn't mean that you can just write whatever you want. If colleges ask for proof, if you don't have a certificate, you can always get a letter from that company or that organization mentioning that you participated in a certain activity and the dates that you were involved in. This is more than enough. Again, this doesn't mean that you just outright start lying on your college application, but at the same time, you don't have to worry so much about not having the certificates on hand. So to sum it up, I think UPenn put it in a very nice way that there are no right or wrong extracurricular activities. You just have to do what's best for you and what you can make best of with the resources that you have available. Now again, these activities doesn't mean that you have to spend thousands of dollars, and just because someone doesn't have that budget or the financial stability to do that won't get into a good college. You just have to be smart about how you approach this entire activities part on your profile. So enough with me telling you what to do because this is kind of getting really boring. I want to show some examples of students who got into some really cool universities and some pretty cool projects or activities that they had on their profile. The first one we're going to look here is MIT's Beaver Summer Program. This is a very competitive program and this particular student here designed an autonomous underwater vehicle, got into Carnegie Mellon and is currently studying computer science. Now this is what creates credibility. A few things that stand out here is the fact that it was MIT's program, so that itself creates academic credibility. And as you can see, it's not directly related to computer science. He's still kind of like exploring what he wants to do. He's involved in something that's fun, but at the same time, it's academically competitive, and this is the type of activity that should be on your profile as well. The second one on our list is getting published in an online journal. This particular student was the principal author for a research paper that focused on comparative analysis between government expenditure and inflation. This student got into Cornell under the Tata Scholarship, so it was a fully funded scholarship, and this was just one of the many activities on his profile. And as you can see, this is a huge deal because getting published into a journal is difficult enough. Like I've done it, it takes a really long time to do this. On top of that, doing this as a high school student before you've even entered college is a huge deal. When you publish your work in a journal, it just doesn't happen right away. When you submit your work, it typically gets reviewed by the editorial board. They may reject it, they may ask you to make some changes, and it takes a really long time. So the fact that you do a research project, you get it published in a journal shows academic credibility, and it also shows that you have that dedication and that perseverance to work for that end goal. There's a huge misunderstanding out there that to get your research published, you have to be affiliated with a university or spend thousands of dollars or even go to a lab to actually do the research work. Now, there are virtual opportunities available like the Research Bootcamp by Incognito Blueprints, which is going to open up in just about 1 week, where you'll be working in a group of 3 to 6 students in a span of 2 months. There are different mentors, advisors. I'm one of them. And you get to work on an individualized group research project. Now, these research projects are not 10 years old or something that you learn in your science book. None of that boring stuff. They're cutting edge with today's technology, and a lot of the students that participated in this research bootcamp last year even went on to publish their work. So this academic credibility that I was talking about earlier, getting your work, furthered and into an online journal, this is where it all starts. Being involved in a research opportunity like this is going to be huge for your profile. Now, enrollment is going to open up in a few days, and I'm going to put the link in the description, so definitely sign up to get the early bird pricing. The next example we're going to look at is YYGS, which is Yale Young Global Scholars Program. Now, this is a very popular program and it's open to all students. The one that we're going to look at today, we have a student from Carnegie Mellon and Columbia University. Again, the point is you get to work in separate projects. These projects can really highlight your profile, and the fact that it's conducted by Yale University and Ivy League puts that academic credibility that we're looking for here. Now, the YYGS program does have an annual deadline, so make sure you head on over to their website and see when the applications open so you don't miss out on that as well. The next one we have is a student who got into Cornell University, specifically the early decision round. Now, getting accepted into ED, especially for an international student, is a huge deal because the acceptance rate is extremely low. Now, 2 of the things that he had on his profile was taking a couple courses at the Quantum School for Young Students by the University of Waterloo and being a citizen scientist at NASA. Now, again, these are huge names, shows that he was working in a group of people led by specific projects, and he also worked in these big name companies. All of these things together is what helps elevate your profile. The next one is a student who took a couple courses at Stanford's Summer Institute, got into Dartmouth University, again, one of the 8 Ivy Leagues. And we have another student who did a shadowing, sort of like an internship at McKinsey & Company, who got into Brown University. Now, these are just some of the examples that I took to showcase what the most elite students have done. And again, I'm in no way trying to discourage a lot of you or demotivate you when you kind of look at these examples and be like, well, I don't have anything close to what these students have. Point is, you need to make the best of what situation you have available. So this is just a starting point, and remember that these are just like the top 10 universities out there. Maybe you can still aim for this and get into some other good colleges that you're trying to achieve as well. So let's slow things down a little bit. We looked at all of these examples, and I want to kind of share my opinion around the whole extracurricular activities topic. The first thing is, I feel academic credibility is super important. And the reason I say this is, at the end of the day, you are going to college to study something. So the fact that you're able to study and learn something new right now and showcasing that is extremely important. The best way to do that is in a group setting, because ultimately in college or even later on in your career when you're working in different projects, you will be expected to work in a team or a group. So trying to do everything by yourself is not really the way to go, especially in your activities. Next, make sure that these activities are somewhat outside of your school, because once it's related to your school, colleges kind of think that it was like an easy route that you took. Opening a club in school has gotten very overrated. Getting involved in school-based activities, it's good to a certain extent, but if you have your entire profile filled with that, it kind of gets really boring and repetitive at the same time. Now, with a lot of these summer programs like MIT, Stanford, Yale, they can get very competitive and sometimes even very expensive. So you might think, how would the Research Bootcamp by Incognito Blueprints produce academic credibility? And the point is, when you're working on a project for a span of those 2 months, after that, you go on to publish your work in an online journal. That is your #1 credibility. Secondly, with this summer cohort, the mentors that actually work with the students, for example, myself, I have a background, graduated from Cornell University, I have a master's degree. There are other mentors who are currently working as research scientists in Manhattan, and many more. This is where your credibility comes from. You get to work alongside subject matter experts and then go on to publish your work. This is something that you cannot do alone, and it again ties back to that whole thing that you have to be involved in some sort of a teamwork and a group activity to really showcase that academic credibility. Next, school should never be an excuse that you are not able to do an activity. Find something virtual or something you can do online, if it's even as small as taking a course and expanding your skill set. Something is always better than nothing. And lastly, you decide what activities matter. Just because your neighbor or your friend or your senior from your school got into a really good university doesn't mean that if you just copy all of the activities that he or she did, you'll also get into that same university. If anything, you're just making yourself an identical copy of another student, which is something colleges never want. You actually have to do something to stand out. So you have to draft what kind of activities you want to be involved in that showcase your personality and your character. Alright, so that's all that I had for this video. I hope that you found this helpful and it kind of showcased what you can do to elevate your own profile. And we're gonna get the random question of the day back. I want to know from you guys, what is your favorite after school or after college / work activity that you like to do at home? Don't make it boring, like you go to tuition or you're studying. No, leave all that stuff aside. What do you actually like to do after a long day of work? For me personally, it is playing FIFA on my PS5. It's something I do very religiously for an hour every single evening, no matter what happens. What's yours? Put it in the comment below. Other than that, like the video if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys next week. Don't forget to enroll in the research bootcamp. Bye.